Go.
Hey y'all, I'm James Wright, and welcome back to Wizards New. Wrong channel. Welcome back to Wood by Wright. It's the fun when you have multiple channels. I was having an issue keeping the endings different and the beginnings different. Some of them are too close, but yes, tonight we are making a molding plane, and this has been requested probably dozens to possibly hundreds of times over the course of Wood by Wright. And I've gotten really close to it. I've made several other planes, but I've never actually made a wooden plane in a mostly traditional manner. And in particular, I'm going to be making a dovetail plane. So this should be a fun thing, and it'll probably end up being a series of 2 to 3 weeks because it's not something I can build completely in 1 hour. If I could, I'd probably be selling them because you can sell them for around $300 to $400 a piece if they're done well. So besides that, we have a few things coming up. Later this month, there is going to be a meet in Ottawa, Illinois for the Midwest Tool Collectors, and I'm probably going to be there. Very, very good chance of that. And then I just got in the mail today the invite for the national meet, and so this is the big one. This is in...
Sorry.
What's that?
They're saying your mic's low. Which number is it?
That's right. I got to flip it around. I'm probably still on the overhead because I was doing the live this morning. Oh yeah, look at that. Let's try that one off, and then let's try this one there. That should be better.
You could have just told me. I could have done that.
I couldn't remember what numbers they were. Yeah, we have the national meet coming up, and this is in Missouri. What's the town in Missouri? S.
It's not St. Louis?
No, other one.
Saginaw?
No, same as Illinois' capital.
Springfield.
Springfield, Missouri. There we are.
Saginaw's Michigan. Don't ask. I don't know.
Let's see, and that is late September, I believe, like September 26th. So if you don't know what that is the big meet for hand tools in the world. This is the largest sale of hand tools that happens regularly. So yes, this is going to be a lot of fun. If you imagine an entire basketball field or a little bit larger space completely covered in tables of tools for sale, and then the day before you go outside in the parking lot and everyone opens up their trunks and has some usually really, really good deals on tools. So it is well worth it, and people literally come in from all over the world to go to this. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to mwtca.org and find out there. It's where I bought most of my tools have come from Midwest Tool Collectors meets. So I'll be looking forward to seeing you there. Anything I'm forgetting before we dive in? Well, let's actually look at a molding plane and what a molding plane is. Let me grab a couple here. A molding plane is a plane that's been sitting around in a moist environment a little too long, and it's molding.
You've been waiting all day to use that, haven't you?
And basically, they are for creating molding or trim that goes around different things. And they come in all different shapes and sizes and all different types, and they are... Oops, wrong button. Let's try this one. 2. There we go. And they have usually an interesting profile here. And you can get this profile.
Hang on, dude. You're all...
What happened there?
All right, now we're going to have real fun.
Let's try it.
Aw, come on. I was enjoying it the other way. No. It says no. See? No.
Try that. Uh-oh. Why
No.
is this always happening to me? Here, let's try this one instead.
No.
Just a moment. If it's not one thing, it's another. The fun of doing lives.
How about now?
Nope.
Nope.
So apparently there's a problem with the camera. Okay, well, hang on here
Matrix.
Hang on here a moment. Let me actually switch around my other camera, and I can use that to kind of do both tonight, so you won't be able to get this big shot. But I'm going to have to disconnect for a moment.
Squint your eyes and stare real hard, there'll be a picture of an animal coming out at you.
Yes. Waggle your head side to side. Here, let's do this. So I'm just going to go off the one camera tonight then.
Whoa.
And you can get these looks at me. Hi. I can't see me yet. Hi.
Oh.
James, out of focus.
Okay, Alan did his super chat for my Cocoa Fun. So now you know a dad joke. Although I'm not sure what the gnome theme is tonight.
Let me go through this and then I will take care of that in a moment. So we've got molding planes here, and you can see how they have a profile.
Whoa.
And this will allow you to do what?
We're good now.
You can have a profile here so you can do...
Okay, we're not good.
Oh, what is going on?
It's fritzing.
What is going on with my life? Let me try one more thing here. 1, 2... Oh, you lumpus.
And now you have a pittance for the new camera fun.
No, it's not the camera. It's all the other equipment that goes into this. There's miles and miles of equipment that goes into making this thing happen. And if any one little item goes out, then you got to start playing the game of which item is in the chain is dead.
So what questions are there for Sarah since James
Yeah. Say hi to Sarah for a moment. Yeah, let's try this one. See if we can get that up.
Here, throw me the dad book. We'll call it the mom book. Mom book.
Let's go. Oh, that's not going to work either. So let's try 2 to 1. Nope. 1 to 2. No. Oh. You ever seen that movie, My Life in Ruins? That's my wife's favorite. Right,
I haven't seen that movie in a long time.
Let's try this.
How's the nursing business going? Busy. Busy.
Input 2.
We have no room in the inn.
Okay, let's try that.
Well, that's a fun little
let's
picture.
see if it stays. Okay, let's try this for a third time here. We might actually get to making a molding plane tonight. So this is a molding plane, has a particular profile.
I need an injection.
A bunch of different profiles and different designs.
Honey, we're not looking at anything that you're showing. We're looking over here. We're on this camera.
What in the world? Oh, so the other camera is now working. Okay, let's see if that does it. Take 73. Okay, hey, look at that. Now we have an image here. Okay, this is a molding plane.
A what?
A molding plane. And so it's an interesting profile, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. So anytime you would use a router to create a particular profile, there used to be a molding plane that would do that. And so you can get them as a whole set. If you look up here on my ceiling, I have, this is about half of my molding planes up here up top. And of these, I've probably used about 3/4 of them. Some of them are just really weird profiles that I've never used. But one of these days I might, just because you might as well have a chance to use it. But tonight we're actually going to be working on a dovetail plane. And this particular one, now dovetail planes come in all different shapes and sizes. And this particular one is more or less a molding plane. But rather than having a rounded profile or something weird like that, it just comes to this point. And what this will allow you to do is cut sliding dovetails. So if I wanted to create a dovetail on the end of this plane, on the end of this board, I could use this to come in and profile a groove on this side. And then I can turn around and profile a groove on this side, and that will create a dovetail on the top of this board. And that is one of the benefits of this. You want to see this? I have a couple old videos doing sliding dovetails where I make this. Now the problem I have with this one is it's a very acute angle here. Isn't that cute? And I want to make one that is more obtuse, more like me. So this is my wife, and I'm going to make one like me. Oh, come on, that's got to be worth something.
After you throw me under the bus and say, maybe we'll start on time. I don't see you putting your children to bed.
So I have ordered the iron for it, and I was hoping it would be in by now, but it is not. And I just ordered it from Lee Nielsen. I actually put it down in the description below, so if you want to see that. And they come without this angle on it. They come just straight topped, and we'll be showing you how to profile that later. It's a relatively easy thing, especially when they come out annealed and you can harden it later. But tonight, what I want to do is start making the channel, the mouth, and all of the inner workings where this sits into and beds down. And we are going to be doing an enclosed channel like this. So there is this opening here, which is very scary because how do you make such tight cuts all the way down inside of there? So hopefully we'll be getting to that as long as I get cameras to work. I gotta figure out what's wrong with that other one. Now I'm gonna be making it out of red oak. Why red oak? Because I have it on hand. Is this the best wood for it? No. Is this wood acceptable? Yes. Yeah, it's plenty good. It is ring porous, so it does wear out in different fragments, so that the softer wood will wear out faster than the harder rings. This one was made out of American beech, which is a really good wood for it. Maple would be a great one. The good old standard is European beech. That is the most common, trusted, like, yes, this is good, which I think this one is European beech. And then often you would have the tip of this would be made out of boxwood. Actually, let me see if I have some piece of boxwood up here. Here, here's a molding plane of boxwood. And so you can see in this one, I've got a chunk of boxwood here, right here in the corner. And I'm out of focus. There. And so this piece right here is boxwood. Boxwood is an extremely hard wood, very durable, and wears well. So when something comes to a point like this, they would replace that point with boxwood so it would wear longer. And I'm thinking about doing that with this and replacing the very tip of this with boxwood. I haven't decided if I want to do that yet. I have a scrap boxwood that I think will work. And we may end up doing that, or I may just leave it with oak, and you know that over time it's going to wear out. Boxwood will also wear out, but it will wear out much slower than the oak will. So we'll be seeing about doing that.
Okay, so I have a question.
What's that?
Why did you pick red oak versus white oak?
Because the stick I had on hand was red oak. So you work with what you have.
So it was a size thing.
Yeah. If I had a piece of hard maple on hand that was that size, I would definitely use that. But the red oak will work fine. It's a little bit softer than white oak, but not that much, to the point that most people won't tell the difference unless you're regularly using it, and then it depends on which type of red oak, which type of white oak. But I got 2 dad jokes I gotta give, don't I?
You do.
Ooh. I buy my guns what? I buy my guns from a guy who calls himself T-Rex. He's a small arms dealer.
I knew that was coming.
What? Here's one.
Wait, I'm waiting for the small arms jokes to come back from Alan about me.
Yeah, there you go. Does anyone have the small legs joke? Why did the coffee file a police report?
Why?
It got mugged. Welcome to Wood by Wright. Okay, so let's get back to this.
I deserve a raise.
One question I get all the time is, how long should you make your molding plane? And you can make it whatever length you have. I have some of them that are 11 inches. I have some of them that are as small as 7 inches. The traditional standard that you're going to hear a lot of people say is 9.5 inches. That is the approved exact length. But you can make it whatever length you want. Most old molding planes that would come from a pattern are about 9.5 inches long. Now, if you are in the metric world, then you make your planes at 9.5 inches. Because that's what they were made at. And that being, I've actually seen a European maker who still keeps an imperial tape measure so that he can make molding planes at imperial distances, which I think is kind of funny, but that's the way it is. So we're going to work with this. The first thing we're going to do is cut it to length, and then we are going to dimension this. I'm going to keep it at its full 3.5 inches, and it is currently just over 1.5 inches wide, and we're going to be cutting it down to about 1.25 inches. We're not going to do that tonight. Tonight we're going to cut it to length and start laying out the escapement on this. So first thing we're going to do is grab a square and knife. Do you have any questions while I'm setting up?
So I was actually just going back in the chat for that. Alan had a question way back when. It says, so first question, best type of wood to use, question. Historic woods used, question. Advantages, question. Best place to get the metal and how to treat it, question.
Treating the metal, we'll be covering that later.
I think you talked about the best wood.
Tempering it and well, hardening it and then tempering it because it comes annealed from the store. I'm buying mine from Lee Nielsen. It's actually a blank for hollow and round, and then we will be shaping it here. Woods, well, I talked about that already, so here you go. Now here's a trick. When marking all the way around a board, don't keep the fence of the square on the same side. Because if the board is ever so slightly out of true one way or the other, if you run this all the way around keeping the fence always on the same side, then you're basically going to be creating a spiral around the board. What you want to do is find your the sides that you're tracking off of. So I'm keeping off of this side and this edge. And so I can put it on here, I'll mark this side. Then I'll flip it up, I'm keeping it on this side because I'm working, this is my true side. But when then I roll it over, this is my true edge. So I'm going to flip this over like this. And then for the fourth side, I'm going to keep it on this side. So two of it, it's been on one side, and two of it, it's been on the other side. And that way, if there's any deviation in it, your line goes askew one way and then comes back to where it was before. So you always get a clean line that ends up precisely where it started off at. So keep in mind, always keep the fence on the side that you're referencing. So now we have that. We can cut this up. And I'm going to back up here a little bit so you can see this. Now I could take it over to the saw bench, but that's a little harder to do with live. So I'm going to do it here. And I'm not going to care about really making a beautifully clean cut. Just going to grab a cross-cut panel saw, go on the line, and go to town.
So I was not listening, so I'm going to ask this question now, even though it's out of turn.
What's that?
The poor man asked, what if your square is out of true?
Then you need to fix it. I actually have a couple of videos on how to square a square, and you can square a square without a square. And the easiest way to actually check if it's square is, I don't have a piece on here, so I want to grab a board that I know has a nice straight edge. And if I put this up against the straight edge, mark a line on this side, and then flip it over and mark the line again, those two lines should be perfectly parallel. If those two lines diverge at all, then you know your square is not square. But there are several ways you can adjust it, and I have a couple videos on those. So let's go ahead and cut this down. And I'm going to be looking at the line on my side. Ooh, I just bounced out. At least I bounced out the right way. I was getting excited. I'm not pushing down. I'm not getting my weight into the saw. I'm letting the weight of the saw do the cut. Tell it's about time to sharpen this saw. As it is with most of my saws, because I just let them go until, I really got to sharpen this one. And there we go. Now, if everything was done perfectly, this would be perfectly square in this orientation, and I'm off just a hair, plain pass or so. Although I'm square this way. So apparently, I'm square when I measure it this way, but I'm not square when I measure it this way. This means that these two sides of the board are not perfectly parallel. And then, perfectly square that way, perfectly square that way. So these two faces are good, but I have to keep in mind these two edges are not perfectly parallel. So there's our molding plane. Any questions?
Let's see, Blue Kestral. I have a question about the video about making the plain tote. Why put the ring on the brace bit?
I got a lot of questions about that. If you look up I have a video on how to drill straight. What happens if you put the ring on there, if you're angling down, the ring slides that way. If you're angling up, the ring slides back this way. And when it's rolling, if there's any slight inclination one way or the other, the ring will move progressively along the shaft. And so as long as you keep a point on the bit here, like I have the logo, and so I'll usually put the ring on the logo. So if it moves back, that means I need to lift up just a little bit. And then it'll move forward a little bit, that means I need to drop it down a little bit. So the ring allows you to drill a perfectly level hole And when you're looking down at it, you'll be able to know if the bit's turning this way. So if you can look at the ring and know if it's turning this way, and you can look at it straight on and see if it's turning this way, then you can drill a perfectly flat, square, and plumb hole. It's a nice little trick with a wedding band. And one of the reasons why I use a wedding band and not just another ring is that the wedding band is actually rounded inside, and that allows it to move on the shaft much easier. If it was a flat thing like a plumbing compress, they don't slide as well on there, and so they're not as accurate. So,
I don't know if I should be pleased or not that you're using your wedding band in
yes, you should be pleased.
methods.
So, we're going to start doing the layout on this, and this is the most important step of the whole thing. And so we're going to be spending most of the night doing the layout, and we might end up getting to some of the cutting of the escapement. But once you get the layout on, everything else is kind of downhill from there. So we're going to bring this one over here, and I'm going to basically duplicate what I have on this one. Grab this one at it. Most beds are going to be at 45 degrees-ish, and this one is actually a little bit steeper than 45 degrees. Not by much, so it's probably like, 47 degrees. Maybe 46 degrees. And really, the people who worry about the precise angle are way too perfectionistic for this. If your bed is precisely at 45 degrees, it will work just as well as if it's at 46, 47, 48, 49 degrees. So, give or take 5 degrees and you're perfectly fine. So the first thing I want to do is pick out where I want the mouth to be. Where is the edge going to come out? And usually that's 2/3 of the block. Now, I could come out and measure 9.5 inches. And so that means it needs to be 6 and just over 3/16. Something like that. Yeah, just over 3/16. But I'm not going to mess with that. I'm just going to pick a spot. And I'm going to say the mouth is going to come out right here. That looks pretty good to my eye. Put my square on here, and I'm going to draw the bed angle on this. So put my knife in here, and then draw my bed angle. Now I'm going to end up probably trimming this off, so it won't be quite as tall, because you can see it's a little bit taller than it needs to be, but not by much. Cool. Now that I have my bed angle in here, I can then put on where do I want my wedge to be. Now, before I need to figure out the wedge, I need to figure out how large is this mouth. And you want to keep this mouth as tight as you possibly can. And some of these you'll see, like this one, there's about 1/16 of an inch between the front of this and the mouth. Some of them might even be a little bit closer. It's very, very tight here. But we need to know the thickness of our steel. And our steel is an 1/8 inch thick. So what I can do is I can find a piece that's 1/8 inch thick, put that on there, and then I want to make a couple marks at 1/8 inch thick. Actually, I'm just going to make one. That way I can bring this over. And this is our second line, which is the line of the iron. And you have to be careful, some irons are actually tapered. And if they are, at this point it's not going to matter too much because you can actually adjust the wedge to make whatever that taper is on the iron. But I know that I now want the mouth to be slightly in front of the tip of the iron. So I'm going to move it about 1/16 of an inch forward. Just a hair. Some people will actually put it right on the tip of the iron because they can open it up a little bit later. Actually, no, I'm going to do that on this one because this one I'm going to be fiddling with the tip on this. So rather than actually creating a mouth space, I'm going to leave it tight and I'm going to keep it right on the front of the iron there. What that will allow me to do is I can open it up by removing material from the bottom of the sole, which we'll get to later. So the next thing I need to do is lay out the wedge. And some people are going to get really picky about the wedge angle needs to be X, the wedge angle needs to be Y. And usually what I'll do is either grab another wedge over here and I'll go like, yeah, that looks good, so let's put a mark right here. Or I'll just eyeball and say, yeah, that looks good right there. Then we'll bring over my square, put the knife on that line for the top of the wedge, slide this over, and then mark this. Now, are there any questions before I jump into this? I'm looking for questions particularly about the layout.
Well, going back, I think you answered it, but Alan had a neighbor stop by the board, how long you cut it. Was it 9.5 inches?
9.5 inches.
Okay. And
Let's see
then
if I can get these lines. There we go.
there was a question from earlier that I didn't get a chance to ask. So tell me if you don't want to answer right now. Tim BBQ asked, how do you cut the slot for the boxwood when you were showing that?
I'll be covering that if I get there.
Okay.
So that'll probably be in the last video if so.
Okay. There we go.
So here we've basically laid out what this escapement will be. So we have one line, which is the bed that the iron will sit on. We have another line here that is the thickness of the iron up. And then we have a third line that's at a different angle, that's our wedge. What that angle is, a lot of people are going to give you very specific things. It needs to be this, it needs to be that. It really doesn't matter that much as long as the angle is relatively close to where it needs to be. So now that we have these lines drawn on here, we need to transfer them around the bottom and top of the plane. So I'm going to grab a square here, put this up on edge, and then I'm going to make a nick here, and I'm just going to run all the way across the top here. I'm making this block larger than it needs to be, so if I cut any of these lines, I can plane them off later and remove them. And then we need the iron. Actually, I don't need the iron, but I'm going to put it in there just in case. And then I want to have these lines on the bottom as well. Let's put that one on there. So this is the size that the mouth will be when it comes out. So there is what it needs to look like inside this block. Next we need to figure out how far into the block do we want this hole to be. So if I take the iron out of this one, I put this in here, the question is, where does this hole need to be on this block side to side?
Can you refocus again?
Sure. There's that better?
Yeah.
So where is this hole side to side on this block? Now that's going to be determined by my iron, because I want the edge of the iron to be right out on the side of the block. And the one I have is 7/8. Now what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to bring it in slightly so that the iron is actually not flush with the outside, but in a little bit. What that does is it gives me a little bit of breathing room so I can plane this surface down until it meets the iron perfectly. Because you always want to make things a little larger, you can always shave them down to something smaller later on. And the iron that I got was 7/8, and I don't have it here yet, so I'm going to put a nick at 7/8, and then I'm actually going to add another 1/16 to it. So there's my mark where I want it to be for 1/16. Then to make it a little bit easier, I set this on here, put that right into the nick I just made, set the fence, and then draw this. So this line here, oops, sorry about that. This line here is this edge of the cut. This line here is the back edge of the cut. This line here is the front edge of the cut. Now we need to measure how wide do we want it to be. In this case, it is going to be a 1/4 inch wide. And I'm actually going to grab something I know to be a 1/4 inch wide, which is a chisel here. And I'm going to be cutting this slot with the chisel. Now the actual iron is it's a 64th of an inch thinner than a 1/4 inch, whatever that comes out to. And what that does is it gives you a little bit of slop, a little bit of play in there for wiggling around. And so the slot will end up being a little bit bigger. The other thing is I'm setting the slot to the width of my chisel that is going to do the work of cutting it out. So just like cutting a mortise, you choose your mortise size by what chisel you're going to be using. In this case, I'm choosing the escapement size by what chisel I'm going to be making. So there is our slot this way, and we know that this line needs to cut down that angle here. Now the question comes, how do we chop that out? Because that's scary. How am I going to chisel all the way down that thin slot, all the way down to there?
And continue next week.
So we'll come back next week. No, this is the part that scares everyone. So I want to stop here because if it wasn't for this step, everyone would be making these. And so this is the thing that that terrifies people. And once you get past of the fear of this particular step of cutting it, then everything else in this becomes so much easier, because everything else is just shaping it and putting the profile in, and you're done. Well, other than making the wedge. Wedge is a little bit, but it's not that much. And so you actually have a couple things that you can do in here to make it a little bit easier. Number one, you can see up here, it's open down here. So I can cut out a lot of this from the side. So I don't have to chisel all the way down. I just have to chisel down to this point. So now I'm only worrying about this small area here, and that makes it a little bit easier. The one important thing is you want to keep it away from the bed. The bed is the only important line in this entire thing. The bed is what matters. Everything else can be adjusted. Everything else can be moved around. The bed is important. So stay away from it as long as you can, and I'll show you how to get to it a little bit closer once we actually get to that point. Trying to figure out how I want to actually say this. Once you get to the point of understanding how relatively easy this is and getting off of the fear of it, this will become much easier. So take it step by step. Anytime you fear doing something in woodworking, it's because you're looking at the big picture and you're thinking, how do I eat this elephant? And you eat it piece by piece, step by step, little bit by little bit. We know where we need to remove the material. So now let's start removing the material, and we're going to do it little piece by little piece. There's a couple different ways we can do this. Number one, I can come in with a chisel, just like I would with a mortise, and chop in this way, and chop in this way, and chop in this way. And sometimes I actually like to start that because I like to leave the opening nice and clean from a chisel. The other thing is we can come in here with a drill bit or an auger, and we can go and clean out as much as we can and then chop back to it. Some people will actually come in here with a pick, and they'll bore it out, and then they'll use a riffler. And so they'll stick the riffler down there and move little bits of material at a time. And the slower you can move material, the better your end project will be. The more you can sneak up on the lines. The faster you move material, the better the chance there's going to be a problem. And one of the fun things about this is there really isn't a good way of doing this with a machine. It's just not something that you can do well. Yes, you can use a square bit to get down in there, but you can only get in little ways, and then you got to work the rest out with a chisel anyways. So it's kind of a fun little project on that side note. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to start by chiseling this out and getting a little bit in here. Then I'm going to come in with a drill bit and run that down here. So first thing is set this up on here, and I'm going to move this over a little bit. Any questions while I'm setting this up?
Hang on. They're not all related to what you're doing.
I got time for one.
Okay. Our Tawney asks, why is it that no matter how square I sharpen my number 7 iron, I still have to move the lateral adjustment lever almost all the way to the right?
That could be that your frog is out of alignment. And that's often common, that the frog is actually slid side to side. It could be that there is also something wrong with the mechanics on the plane. Or it could just be that's the way it is. I have a couple planes that the lever is most all the way over to the side. And so on that particular iron, I may actually sharpen it a little bit more to one side, and I actually sharpen it out of square. Oh my, but it actually works in the plane, so that's what works. But it's really not something to worry about as long as you're getting an even amount sticking out all the way across the bottom. Even if it's all the way over to the side, then that's great. That's what it needs. So don't worry about it too much. Grabbing mallet, grabbing chisel. I forgot to sharpen this ahead of time. Yeah, good, it's pretty sharp. So I'm going to stay away from the line. I'm just going to do a light tap in. Move over to this side and tap in from here. And what I want to do is kind of create a small mortise here, or a small groove that, actually parallel these lines a little bit first. And this will then make it far easier to put a drill bit in there. Just cutting those fibers side to side. So once we get this small groove in here, then we can come back in and bore out the majority of the material. Now I'm not being very careful about keeping the top of this clean because I am going to be planing this off. I am going to be cutting down some of the top surface here. So if I get tear out here on the top, oh well, not a problem. I'm making this bigger than it needs to be so I can clean it up later. So I'm just going to take this down about 1/4 inch. And I'm just staying away from the lines. And also when I'm cutting, I'm going to eyeball this. So let me see if I can show you what I'm doing with my head here. Is I'm actually looking down the line I have on the plane on the side of it.
Do you want me to help you?
I think I got it here. So I'm actually keeping an eye down the chisel, and I'm looking at this line on the side of the plane. And it is amazing what your eyeball can do. So if I look down this, I know that the line of the bed is right there. So I'm actually going to keep away from that line, lowering the handle a little ways. Drop you in, come back here. And now we can remove the material in between those two deep cuts. So we're going to chop in from one side, chop in from the other side, and then come in and pare out the material. And now that I have a little bit of a groove developed here, I can get to dancing. Hey, I got a snort out of my wife. This is good.
I actually was laughing at the comment, not you.
Oh, burst my bubble, will you?
Oh, I guess they can't really see what you're doing.
Can't see what I'm doing? Sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. It'd help if I put the plane in focus here. So I'm just paring down a little ways here. And I've got about 1/4 inch deep here. And this starts to give me my idea of where I need to be. So now I'm going to grab 38. Oh, we're doing good on time. I have a 1/4 inch auger bit here. And I need to clean it up. There's some junk in here. It should be pretty sharp. Yeah, it's good and sharp. And I have a small throw brace. And now we're going to eyeball this hole. Anytime you start drilling something and eyeballing it, that's when people get scared. But I'm going to put it into that hole that I just drilled, or the section I just put in there. And I'm going to be looking down this whole shaft and just eyeballing down, keeping it in line with those lines that I just drew. And it is amazing what your eye can do. Actually, let me back up and show you what I'm doing here. Oh. So I'm keeping my head on here.
I think my little box is going to block their view, honey.
What's that?
Because it's blocking my view of what you're doing.
Oh, sorry. Here, let me back up a little bit farther here. Give you the whole view of it.
Yeah, it's, I think,
but
better.
out of focus. There we go.
Maybe, except you keep drifting my little square in front.
There we go.
Nope, not yet. There we go. Better.
So I can keep my head on here, and this allows me to have an eye right in line with the whole bit down here. And I actually have one eye that's facing down this way, and I have one eye that's looking at it from this way. And so I can keep an even balance on it as we go all the way down. Now the one problem I have is because I have a tight mouth on the bottom, I cannot drill this all the way down to the bottom. If I drill all the way down to the bottom, then I'm going to be chewing into the front of the mouth because my bit won't actually fit all the way down in there. Let me back this out and show you that.
So I have a question of what you're
What's
doing
that?
right now. Ryan Ketrow asked, are you keeping the bit a little off of where you plan the bed to be?
Yes, it is just above the bed here. So if I put the bit down here, I can't drill all the way down to the bottom because the mouth is tighter than the bit is, and it would run into the front here. Oops, sorry. And the bit would then run into the front half of the plane in here. So I'm actually going to drill down and stop somewhere right around here. So I still have a little bit out. But if you notice, the bit is sticking into this open section in the front, and that's fine because I can chisel this out later. I don't need to drill out everything in here in the front. Now to do that, oh, my tape moved. I have blue tape.
Blue tape, sorry.
A woodworker's best friend is blue tape. To do that, I can put a little flag on this and know how deep I can drill. And so I can set that. Oh, I did get something on there. Any question while I'm setting this up?
Unrelated. Let's see. John Martinez asked, is there an easy way to take apart a dovetail joint on an antique piece of furniture so you can I'm assuming it's supposed to be resand the musty wood, not resend.
Oh, this one's gonna make it easy. So this one I can drill all the way down to the threads on here. So as long as I stop short of that, I don't need tape actually. It depends on the glue. If it was high glue, you can heat it up and it will pull apart. If it was PVA, you need to use water, but you need to be careful of that because then you start running into problems of ruining the wood with the water in the joint. Wood and water don't generally work well together. So let's go back to this. The nice thing is once this bit gets set on a trace, it doesn't move off of it. It stays pretty well focused all the way down.
Is there a way
So
we can move my box to the top right because of the other camera issues? Can
Yeah, you can drag it. Hey, look at that.
Ooh, power I didn't know I had.
So there. We now have a hole all the way down. Now, this 1/4-inch bit is always a pain to get out of here.
No, I'm getting that. I'm done.
There we go.
To the center.
Now, we have one drill going all the way down from there. Now I want to put one other one up here. And I'm going to eyeball on the top line, and I'm also going to stay away from that one as well. So we can bring this in here and do the exact same thing again. Just eyeballing the top line of the wedge this time. Except for on this one, I can't go down quite as far. So I'm going to go to right about there. And these two holes will make it far easier to remove the rest of the waste because I have something to chop through in both directions. Come on out. Come out with you. There we go. So basically that is like cutting in, and now we can come in with a chisel and remove most of the material. I do want to be careful about chopping out on this top line here. Let me go in and show you this a little bit carefully. This is one of the plane maker's problems, is when you are chiseling in from the top here, if you're chiseling this way, you're going with the grain as you're doing the bed of the plane. If you flip it around and come this way, you're going against the grain. And the tip of the chisel is going to want to grab into those fibers and start cutting out this way. And that's when you start running into problems as your wedge gets bigger and bigger. The way to fix that is to come around and do it from the other side, but your chisel can't always fit in there. Particularly if your iron is an 1/8 inch, then your chisel needs to be an 1/8 inch, and it's hard to find 1/8 inch chisels that are that big. I have one specifically for that purpose that we'll be using later, but it won't have to do quite as much because a lot of that will be chopping down from the side. Whew, I'm out of breath. So at this point, it's just a lot of little chopping. Take it little bit by little bit, remove out small fiber after small fiber, and chip away. And they do make tools specifically designed for this that actually look like a fishing hook on the end of a stick. And you can stick that down in there and pull out wood, and stick it down in there and pull out wood. A lot of knife makers use them for carving the slot for the tang to go in. But this is just a little bit, almost tedious. But as long as you don't try and speed it up, it goes really, really well. And so a lot of it's just popping out those pieces, then coming in and leveraging them out. Levering, not leveraging. Any questions?
Hang on. Let's see. H. Mahaffey asked, who makes your marking knife?
My marking knife was made by Oh, come on. Dan the Maker Man.
Okay,
Dan
thank you. I
Maker
couldn't
Man.
remember earlier.
And phenomenal work. I'm actually talking with, not that chisel. I'm talking with a tool dealer, and we're talking about making a knife that is the same thing. And so I'm looking forward to the possibility of that. What is the funny?
You have no idea what's going on over here, and it makes me so happy.
Yeah, there's lots of things that go on behind my back. Now, one of the things you have to be careful of is I'll be chopping in here. Let me move over this way so you can see what I'm talking about. Is I'll be chopping in straight down, and I'll make sure I stay way out of focus. Oop, there we go. And I'll be chopping in straight in, but slowly, for some reason, the chisel starts to turn, and it'll start cutting in more on one side or the other. And that's either it's catching the grain or you're not controlling it well. So sometimes what I'm going to do is come in with a chisel and just make sure I pare out the side, make sure that there's no fiber that's catching it and steering the chisel one way or the other. Because you have 4 sides to this. You have the bed, the top of the wedge, and then the 2 sides. And then sometimes I have a thinner chisel. This is a 1/8 inch chisel. It makes this a lot easier to come in here and clean out the dross that the chisel has started to remove. And you can see, now we're down in there about that far already. Again, I'm staying a long ways away from the bed. I'm staying a long ways away from the top of the wedge. Any other question? Camera back.
I don't think so, actually.
No? Okay. Well, I'm going to work on this, but if you guys have any questions, throw them at me, because at this point, it's just a little bit of fiddly work, and I might come down here a little farther.
How do I make more boxes? That's what I want to know. That's my question.
How do you make more boxes?
Yeah.
What do you want in your boxes?
Oh, shush! You don't need to know why. I just need to know how.
There's like 6 other boxes on there already.
Wait, there are?
Yes, they're underneath things, though. Like I could show the desktop right now if you just scrolled it up right.
Well, on here, so that I could.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Ooh.
Now again, when I'm chopping down, I want to stay close to the line. I'm going to put my head over and eyeball down the chisel, make sure that the chisel is in line with those lines that I drew on the side. And when I'm doing the top of the wedge, I need to be careful that the chisel doesn't dive and cut into a surface I don't want it to. And I don't want to take this down all the way. I just want to take this down to the point.
Sorry, I totally changed it.
What did you do?
I don't know if I should tell you what we're trying to do, but I totally screwed it up. Hang on.
Now it's an All About Sarah show.
That square did not do what I wanted it to do.
Some people are here for woodworking, but most people are here for Sarah's antics.
But you don't know the why, and that's what makes it funnier. Oh, now where'd it go? Oh, we gotta stop moving things.
Now I'm getting down to the point here where I'd love to be able to come at it from the other side. And it's starting to dig down in. And most of these little chunks are wiggling free. And with the full-size chisel, it's hard to get them out. With a smaller chisel, you can work them out in here. I'm really looking forward to go back and see these live chats.
I wish I was more computer savvy. This is not. Okay, y'all, give me the secret.
Are you trying to show me baby pictures or something?
No, much more fun than that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting down to the point here where I'm getting diminishing returns on how deep I can get with the wedge narrowing. So now what we're going to do is actually work on the side here and figure out what we want to do on that. And I think we have enough time. Let's actually do the layout on that and maybe some of the start chopping. And that should be about it for tonight. So right now, I have this chiseled.
That's not what I want.
down to somewhere around here. So on this, it'd be like chiseling to somewhere around here. So I have the vast majority of this cleaned out. Now I want to open up and do this on here. And so basically what we have is I want to put a line on here at 2 inches. 2 inches? Nah, 1 3/4. Doesn't matter that much. And what that basically is a line from here up to the top where this ledge is. No, I'm going to make it 2 inches because I'm going to be planing a little bit off the bottom. So I'm going to set this at 2 inches. Put a line on here. And this line will roughly be where I'm going to thin out the top of this. And this is just there to make it feel a little bit better and also looks a little bit sharper in that it keeps the slot in the middle of this thickness here. So at this point, all of this space in here I can come in and chop out. I don't need to bore it all from one end or from the other. I can actually come in and clean it out this way. Let me set this up a little bit. And I want to put this on top of my leg, my bench leg, so that I get a better bounce on here.
Oh.
So if I put it in the middle of the table, I may end up having more vibration on a large chop.
When you get to a point where I can ask questions, let me know.
Go for it.
Okay. DBaca Maker asked, should we worry about the grain direction of the plane?
Yes and no. On this one, the grain is really, really straight. So I'm not worrying about it too much. But what you do want is you want it to be running in the direction so that if this is the front of the plane, I want all the grain to be going down to the back. Basically, I don't want fingers of the grain sticking out like this so if the wood comes by, they're going to want to peel out. I want the fingers of the grain sticking back like this so as the wood comes by, they lay down flat. Traditionally, also, the bark of the tree was on the outside here. You wanted the sole to be the outside of the tree and the top of it to be the inside of the tree. That way the rings would go this way through it. That's the traditional. Whether or not that's exactly specific, I don't know. Why is Alan saying do it? That's scary.
You owe him a dad joke either way.
I do? Let me grab this. Let's see, what's the next on the dad joke?
Regardless of why. And then I have another question.
I'm considering about getting a job cleaning mirrors. It's definitely something I could see myself doing. So I'm going to chop in, but I'm going to stay away from the line, 1/16 inch or more. And I'm just going to come in and cut along here. Now, if all of this is really confusing, one of the best things you can do is go out and buy an old molding plane that's missing the wedge and is in bad shape and can never really be a molding plane again, because you can look at all these cuts and be like, oh, okay, now I get it, when you have something there to compare to. So whenever I'm making a plane, I usually have one on the bench, such as having these here that I can regularly check on. Then once we have those cuts in, we can come in and pair out between them. And if I wanted to, I could come in and bore out this down to depth. But 6 of one half dozen another to me. I find this to be just as fast one way or the as chopping it down as to be boring it out. And my iron thickness is my iron width is 7/8. So that was close. I hit it too hard. So what happened was I chopped down here, and I'm rushing myself, and it's not a problem, but it could develop into a problem. Let me show you a little bit closer what happened here. Is as I was chopping down, I saw the fibers here on the end pull back just a little bit. And thankfully it was just right up here on the tip where I'm going to be removing them, so it's not a huge issue. I just need to be careful right here that when I pound down, I don't pound down too hard and drive this as a wedge that splits it open. It's less of a problem here in the front because I am removing those fibers. But it's just something to be conscious of. I'm really looking forward to showing you floats later on when we actually get into cleaning out the escapement and getting it closer to what we want. Any other questions?
Well, so I don't think we ever got to DBaca's second question, which was, and should it be heartwood or sapwood towards the sole?
Sapwood towards the sole. So that would be the outside of the tree down. But you don't want sapwood in the plane, unless it's one of those weird woods that the sapwood is actually stronger, which that's actually a rare thing. So you can see, this is more of just that same tedious work, chopping in a little bit, cleaning out, chopping in a little bit, never taking too much, always being conscious, thinking about it, don't moving too fast.
Well, I hope they're conscious.
Never being too conscious. You want to zone out a little bit. And if this really worries you, grab a piece of like poplar or something easier. And this is something you can do in just about any wood. So there's no reason you have to do it in your final wood right off the bat. Though it was always nice to make your first attempt the actual practical wood. And then come in with a smaller chisel and remove the chips. Little bit by little bit on the way down. Now I'm going to actually do this off camera later to finish it up, because it's basically doing this exact same thing all the way down, and it gets a little bit harder as you get closer to the bottom, but it's completely doable. Just break up the little chips and pop them out. Break up the little chips, pop them out. So yeah. I think I'm going to stop here for the week then, and when we come back, I'm going to have this roughed out, so next week we can actually come in and do all the detail work, smooth it out, and hopefully I'll have the new iron in, and we can actually bed the iron. If we get time, we might actually make the wedge too, because that's actually a really quick process to start the wedge. And then hopefully week 3 will be the shaping and detailing of the body itself, and we'll have a working plane. So 2, maybe 3 more weeks of this, and we'll have a functioning dovetail plane. For me, if I'm just working the shop by myself, making a molding plane is something that's probably about a 6-hour process. If I'm just working on the one molding plane, and so it's rather intensive, but it's not bad. It's a weekend project. If I'm shooting the video on it, it's probably like an 8 to 10 hour project. But yeah. So what questions do we have before we wrap up?
Let's see. Thomas Foster asked, where do you get the steel you're going to put in the plane?
There's a link to it in the description below in this video. I'm actually ordering it from Lee Nielsen. And they have irons that are finished but square on the top. They don't have any profile on it. And they send them to you annealed. So they're soft enough you can file them and shape them. And so we're going to shape the angle we want and then harden it. And that is a process in itself. But it's O1 tool steel, which is oil hardened tool steel. So we can then heat it up until it becomes non-magnetic, dunk it in the oil to cool it down, and then we want to temper it off, because if you use it straight off of that hardening, it's very, very brittle and can snap off. You get an edge that just doesn't hold because it just breaks off. And then we want to temper it by putting it in an oven for a while and bringing it up to a temperature and letting it kind of mellow. But we'll be covering that later. Although I won't do it live because it's a long step-by-step process that you can do over the course of the day. I'll just explain it and show the different steps. Maybe I'll actually do the oil dipping during that time. That'll be kind of fun. Light the shop on fire,
All right, so Robert Fox asked, is this a particular style of plain body / block? Were there styles different in different nationalities, German, Italian, English, etc.?
There were different styles in different nationalities and different times. And if you go back and look at different traditions, they're going to be wildly different throughout the years. So there really is no traditional method unless you're talking about a particular area and a particular time. There are particular designs that are more common over the years, but people are going to tell you you've got to do it this way because this is the traditional method. There is no traditional method. You can do it whatever way you want, as long as it does the work you want it to do in the end. That's what's good. That's what's good. What?
Nothing. I'm just having fun over here. playing with things. Muhaha. Hang on. Well, they asked what's a float, but I think they just have to come back next week to find that out.
Yes, a float is a very specific type of file. You'll see that later. Got it? Cool. Well, we will come back next week and hit this some more. And no, we won't be ready to use it next week because I'll have to still harden the steel. But we'll be pretty close to it. We'll have a plain body next week that makes it pretty obvious how it works. So yeah, if you like this, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have any particular video you'd like me to do in lives, this is kind of the time where we relax and have a little bit of fun to watch in the shop and watch me make a total mess of myself and mess up with the cameras. Gotta figure out what's going on with that one. But I think that'll about do it. So unless I forget anything, I've got to go read these comments.
No.
Until next time, have a good night.
Oh, you want me to hit the button? Hang on. The wrong thing. Hang on. All right. Goodbye.
So what's all the fun?